What up, what up? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Modi J, and we are locked in. Now, we have something very, very special. I was a huge fan of wrestling growing up, so it's only right that I break these down for you. A&E and WWE put together their own little series, biography of WWE Legends, and the first episode is none other than Stone Cold Steve Austin. I was a huge fan of wrestling, and I was definitely a fan of Stone Cold. If you watch wrestling, you were a fan of Stone Cold. If you didn't watch wrestling, you knew who Stone Cold was. He was larger than life, and this is the best way to start it off. But before we get into the recap, we got to do the YouTube stuff. Shout out to the notification gang. If you're new to the channel, you want to be a part of this, hit your subscribe button, turn on your notification bell so you get something every time I upload. Hit that like button. It's the easiest thing you can do. Now, what they're doing with these biographies, just like any other biography, it's going to start off with them as a kid. We're going to see how they got into wrestling. Once they got into wrestling, the steps it took. Then once they reached the peak, and then where they are now. And they put together a very, very good show. And it's always good to hear it from the wrestler's mouth. But I'm not going to hold you guys up. Let's jump into it. This is the biography, WWE Legends, Stone Cold Steve Austin. To start the episode off, they asked Stone Cold, what is the difference between Stone Cold and Steve Austin? And then he says Stone Cold is exactly that. He's Stone Cold. He's in the ring. But then he actually thinks about it and says, well, you know, there's really no difference between Stone Cold and Steve Austin. They're the same exact person. After he thinks about it, he's like, you know what? The difference between Stone Cold and Steve Austin is the environment. When he puts on his wrestling gear, when he goes to the mat, when he goes to the gym, it's all business. Stone Cold's not here to play around. Y'all know how Stone Cold was in the ring. It's here to tear your head off. Let's get this work in. Let's get this work done right the first time. Now, Steve Austin, on the other hand, when he's outside of the ring, he's more laid back, understanding and trying to hear things out. But we want Stone Cold. That's what we want. Stone Cold went from a kid in Texas to a professional wrestler to a global icon. That just shows you the story of Stone Cold. He's done so much, and he made it to the tip top of wrestling. Probably the biggest wrestler ever. You even hear the other wrestlers saying Stone Cold took the WWE to places that they never thought wrestling would be. Stone Cold was a living legend and icon. WWE was built on this man's back. To get to the level that it is now, you needed a man like Stone Cold. Now let's take it back. Stone Cold was born in Austin, Texas, but they didn't stay there long. He actually moved out to Edna with him and his family. Now it was 4 boys and they had a younger sister. They said Stone Cold, Steve Austin, when he was younger, he was very shy. Unlike his other brothers and stuff, he was very shy. So he would even have his little sister. He would call her in the kitchen. Hey, can you call in my order at the Dairy Queen? Because he just didn't want to talk on the phone. That's how shy he was. Up until about the 7th grade, that's when Steve started playing football and he became less shy. Now, when he got on the field, he just loved the sport of football. All he did was work out, practice, and play the game. That's all he wanted to do. While the other kids, they're eating ice cream and stuff. Nope. He's making little protein shakes. He's putting raw eggs in it. And they're all looking at him like, hey, man, we're like in the 7th grade. But for Steve Austin, nah, football was what he wanted to do. In high school, Steve just focused on football. That's all he wanted to do was football, football, football. Now, his brother said he told a story about him and a couple of his friends would be out on the back patio drinking some beer. And Stone Cold would open up the window and yell at him and tell him, shut the hell up. I'm trying to sleep here. Because all he wanted to do was get his workout in, come home, go to sleep, get ready for tomorrow. Same thing. Stone Cold, he was a power back. He wasn't making no cuts or anything. He said he just ran north and south and tried to run people over. But he wanted to be a rock star. The only thing is he couldn't sing or play any instrument. So every Sunday, Houston Wrestling would come on and he would watch this. But he would tell his brother, look, you can have the TV. Just let me watch this wrestling. Because what he seen in that ring, that's what he wanted to do. He was like, well, I can go be a wrestler. That's what he wanted to do after watching this every single Sunday. Coming out of high school, he actually gets a full scholarship to North Texas State to play football. But they move him over to defense. And for him, this is too organized and it's too much work at this next level because, you know, hey, we're trying to get you ready for the NFL. For Stone Cold, this wasn't his cup of tea. He's like, I'm out of this. So he ends up going back home and getting a job. Now, him and his friend, they're working together. And, of course, Stone Cold's been watching wrestling. So let's go see a couple of wrestling matches. They go down there. They see some matches. And while they're there, Stone Cold, he's like, man, I'm loving the atmosphere in here, the noise, everything. So he said him and his friend, they were throwing beers and stuff at the wrestlers because it was just super unorganized back then. But his friend kept tapping him like, hey, you're about the same size or bigger than them. You can get in that ring. And at this moment, Steve was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to be a wrestler. One day watching TV, Steve sees Chris Adams is hosting a wrestling camp where you can try out to come, be on the wrestling circuit. He sees it and he goes. When he gets there, he's thinking, oh man, it's about to be a whole bunch of huge people, monsters and stuff. Because that's when I'm growing up, when I'm looking at wrestling, I'm thinking everybody is huge. But Steve says when he gets there, there's nobody that looks like him. No one that's really ready to get in the ring and do it. It's just regular people off the streets. So this is kind of an advantage for him. We get to hear from good old Mick Foley, Sacco. But he says he actually went to Stone Cold's first wrestling boot camp. Now, him and a couple of other established wrestlers, they were there just to watch, and kind of mentor and look at the wrestlers. And he said that they were all laughing at everyone that was out there wrestling. But at this time, Steve had the long blonde hair. And they said that kid right there with the long hair, he has something. They didn't know what it was, but he had something at that moment. Steve gets selected for this. Now it's the grind of being on the road. For him, they weren't making a lot of money. They may get like $5 to $20 a wrestling match. So for him, it was tuna and potatoes. And when he didn't have any tuna, he'd just peel a raw potato and just eat that. That's what the road was. That's all they had to eat. They weren't making a lot of money, but he knew this is all he had left to fall back on. That's life on the road. That's the grind. But one time he calls his mom and she asks him how he's doing. And he tells her, look, if you could you send me $40? This is the first and the last time that he ever asked his parents for any money. They sent him $40, two $20 bills, he said. Now, mind you guys, this is in the 80s, so $40 goes a long way compared to what $40 can get you now. So he was making a stretch, but $40 was still more than what $40 is now. Steve gets in the circuit, but the only thing is his name is Steve Williams. There's already a Dr. Death Steve Williams. So the promoter is telling him, you can't go out with that name because that's going to be confusing on the card. You got to come up with something. And Steve's like, it's 15 minutes before the match and he can't come up with anything. So the promoter tells him, you know what? You're Steve Austin. And that's how he became Stunning Steve Austin. And at this point, he still had the long hair and he just had a red robe with, the rhinestones on it. So he was Stunning Steve Austin first. Wrestling in the USWA, this was pretty much like a G League type. These wrestlers, they didn't get paid much, $15, $20 a match, but it was giving them an opportunity to be exposed, and maybe WCW could pick them up, the WWE could pick him up. It was just giving everybody a good look. This is where you would start off at, and then you would make it to the next level. And Stunning Steve Austin, hey, he was trying to do his best with what he got. Of course, you wanted to get picked up by the bigger wrestling, WCW, WWE. Steve tells us that the standard contract for WCW at that time was $75,000 a year. Regardless, you sign with WCW, it's $75,000. You could be at the bottom, but that's the standard contract right there. And that is a huge upgrade from making $15, maybe $3,000 a year. Yeah, you want to make it up to WCW. Of course, we're signing with WCW. $75,000? Oh yeah, show us the money. But he says on his first entrance in 91, they're announcing him coming to the ring. They're like, Stunning Steve Austin from Hollywood, California. And he's thinking, when did my Texas accent, when did I come from Hollywood? So his first entrance, they said he was from Hollywood just because of the Stunning Steve Austin. And they're just trying to give, this image. He's flashy, got the long hair, pretty boy type. Okay, he's from Hollywood. First they say he's from Hollywood. Then he gets up there and does the interview. He said he got the biggest booger ever right there hanging from his nose. So the first entrance into the WCW was not good for Steve. Steve's with WCW, but he's not getting the attention and the promotion that he wants. He's in here, he's making good money now, but he still wants to be a star. And one thing they said about him is he could always tap into his athleticism. We know he played football, offense and defense, so he was always athletic, and they said that was a good thing about him. You could see that he really wanted to be here, and at any moment, he can get real physical with you. Let's not just say he was a slouch, though. In WCW, he had a good run. Now, he was a tag team partner. He was in the Hollywood Blondes. They were actually making some moves in there, but still, they wanted to go up another level. Steve didn't want to just be wrestling just to be wrestling. He wants to be the best at whatever he does. And that takes us back to 7th grade, where he was perfecting his body just to play football. And this is in middle school. The WCW, they take him over to Japan. And while he's there, he jumps off the top rope, but the guy actually moves and he tears his tricep over by his elbow. And for the next 3 weeks, he's wrestling with a torn tricep. And he's doing the best he can because, hey, I can't mess up this job that I have because I have a family that I got to take care of back at home. Stone Cold gets back to the States. He has his first major surgery. And while he's in there, after his surgery, Eric Bischoff calls and lets him know that, oh, yeah, you're fired. Now, y'all remember Eric Bischoff with the NWO, all that nonsense he was doing. But he fired Steve Austin after he had his first major surgery. His first real injury, they fired him. Steve is out of a job now. He gets a call from Paul Heyman. He's like, hey, I want you to come over and wrestle for me at ECW. Because at this time, Paul Heyman, he actually owned the ECW. And Stone Cold's like, at this point, I can't wrestle or anything right now. I'm all hurt. And Paul has an idea. He said, can you talk? Steve's like, yeah. Well, won't you come over here and vent? If you're pissed off, come say what you got to say. The ECW, even Steve says it was a complete shit show over there. The arena was trash, but this is a place, it was a job. We get to hear from Mick Foley, and Mick Foley is like, yeah, we really earned our name over there at the ECW. I mean, extreme backflips onto burning tables. They were doing it all because they had to be larger than life in order to sell and compete with the bigger WWF at the time and also the WCW. Steve's first talking chance on ECW, and he actually vents. And he goes in on Eric Bischoff and says, Eric Bischoff, after I had my surgery, he had his secretary tell her secretary to call me and leave a message saying I need to call Eric. I call Eric and Eric fires me. Eric Bischoff also promised me that we were going to do this and do this, get me a title chance, but none of it happened. And they said after he finished this little, this little vent session, everybody in the room stood up and started clapping like, hey, this man is on to something. That's the moment where Stone Cold became Stone Cold. And he didn't have the name yet, but he was on the way. You can see him mimicking Hulk Hogan. He's like, I'm not going to do any of this dumb stuff. So he rips it off because he's starting to become that bad boy. Slowly but surely is coming. That one interview started the process. Now the WWE, WWF, they're starting to see this. And Jim Ross calls like, hey, I want that guy Steve. And at this point, it was ECW. They were up under the WWF. So Paul, he's like, man, I didn't expect it to happen this fast, but they wanted to pull him up to the WWF ASAP. He goes and hears what the WWF has to offer, and they want him to be the ringmaster. The ringmaster is pretty much the person that can control the ring. He's one of the most athletic and gifted, but he's not the big wrestler. And for Steve, it was like, man, I need this money, so let's do it. Also, when he used to go out, he said the stadium would only be about 25% full, but he was in a better system. And he was like, I got to work. You got to pay your dues. The ringmaster was the new gimmick for Steve, but Vince even says it. This is his own words. When my first impression of Steve was, oh man, this guy's wasting my time. Now they heard he could do some big talking, but they haven't seen anything else. And it's all about the business. If we can market him, okay, we can bring him up. But the first impression of Steve from Vince was like, he's wasting my time. Now we get to figure out how Stunning Steve Austin got the Stone Cold name. He said he was drinking a couple of beers and there was a hitman, Richard Kuklinski. He was a hitman for the mob and he was watching him and they called him the Iceman. Now his wife, while he was drinking the beers, she brought him a tea and said, drink up before it gets Stone Cold. And then she said, you know what? That's your name, Stone Cold Steve Austin. They gave Steve a list of about 300 names, Ice Dagger, Chili McIce, all kinds of silly names that had to do with freezing stuff. But the Stone Cold was in his head and it was sticking with him. So Stone Cold Steve Austin is what he went with. Compared to the 300 names they gave him, you did a hell of a job with picking that name. Because I couldn't imagine Iceman Steve Austin, Snowman Steve Austin. No. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now we got the name Stone Cold Steve Austin. And since no one's really watching his wrestling matches, the WWE really isn't even paying attention to him. So he starts to change up his stuff and he puts on all black. Puts on the black boots because he wanted to be dark. Stone Cold. he was he was making a name for himself slowly and up under the radar. Up under the radar, Stone Cold is pushing and pushing and pushing. And finally, Vince McMahon gives in, like, all right, we'll give him a chance. And the opportunity comes with the King of the Ring, which is a one-night event where you battle. And the winner, you get your chance. Pretty much whoever wins this is the next man up. The thing about this is they already know who's going to win. And at this point, it was supposed to be Triple H. Vince McMahon already set him down. You're going to win this. You're the next man up. But we know Triple H and Shawn Michaels are best friends. We know Kevin Nash and Scott Hall are best friends. But when they were in the ring, they all came together and they were doing the pulling the curtain back. And what pulling the curtain back is exposing the outside world, their friendship and relationship, and bringing it into the ring. You're not supposed to do that. So at this moment, Vince takes Triple H and punishes him, sits him down, and tells Stone Cold, hey, you're going to win King of the Ring. You're going to win it. During Steve's first match of the night, he ends up getting kicked in the mouth and has to go get stitches. Now, the thing about this King of the Ring is he has to come back later on and finish his next match. And it's set in stone that you're winning, so you have to show back up. Now, his next opponent to win, he comes out and he starts bringing up the Bible and saying, how can I lose when the good Lord is going to help me and bring me up? Now, he knows he's going to lose, but you still have to put on that show. So for Stone Cold, he took this, and this is going to be a life-changing moment that he does. Since his opponent brought up the Bible, he quickly thought about when he played football, it would always be John 3:16 next to the field goal. So what he did was flip it and said, Austin 3:16 just whooped your ass. And that became one of the moments that Stone Cold became Stone Cold. They say lightning never strikes the same place twice. Well, it did. He knew he had to finish up the promo, and what does he say? And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. So we got Austin 3:16 and the bottom line because Stone Cold said so in the same night. Stone Cold became a made man. That's it. He's out of here. Stone Cold said the next night they came into the arena, you seen all the 3:16 signs. You seen everything. He became larger than life overnight from a wrestling match that he wasn't even supposed to win. So people, when you have an opportunity knocks, hey, you got to answer it. You got to take your best chance and take your best shot at it. Because if you don't, you'll never know what could happen. At this moment, Stone Cold put the WWE on his back, and now they're becoming larger than life. Everyone's focusing on what the hell are they doing over in the WWE with this Stone Cold guy, because he's whooping everybody's ass. You could be a cameraman, come and get some of this action. Referee, come and get some of this action. It didn't matter. Stone Cold was going to whoop your ass. Now we get into Stone Cold's injury. A lot of people thought it was his neck, but it's actually in his spinal cord in his back. Now he's wrestling Owen Hart. The Hart brothers, Bret and Owen, two amazing wrestlers, but that's a whole different story. Now he's telling Stone Cold, I'm going to do this move. And Stone Cold's like, okay, I trust you because it's Owen Hart. Owen Hart knows what he's doing. Owen Hart goes in to do the power driver. Now what they discussed was Stone Cold was asking him, all right, so where you got to have me? And pretty much what he's saying is Owen said that he has him up to at least where his butt is. So when he does the drop, he actually drops down on his butt and not on the head. But as you can see here, he has Stone Cold lower, probably about 6 inches lower than his than his butt. And when he drops on the ground, it's his head that hits straight on the ground. Stone Cold is severely hurt at this point. He's temporarily paralyzed. He couldn't move his hands. So if you watch, he's crawling on his forearms. But he tells the referee, he's trying to still put the show on. He tells the referee, tell Owen we need to go into the roll up, but he's really hurt. And you can see Owen was walking around the ring trying to stall time because he know they made an accident. Stone Cold is really hurt. He's severely hurt at this moment. He can barely walk. So they got referees helping him hold him up. But one thing about Stone Cold is he's still going to put a show on. So he had to raise the belt up to show people that it's not as bad as they think, because you don't want anyone to see that type of injury. And for him, he's Stone Cold. Stone Cold doesn't get hurt. But they carry him out. He's walking, and if you watch the video, you can see his left leg he can't move it, and it's dragging behind him. But that's one thing about Stone Cold. He's not going to let you see his weaknesses. They take him to the back. They call an ambulance. He ends up having to go. They give him surgery on his back. They look at it, and like I said, it's just a spinal injury. It's not his neck. But the doctor said if anything else would have went wrong, it could have been over. He could have been in a wheelchair. But they recommend that he's not going to wrestle anymore. And what Stone Cold says is, no doctor's going to tell me I can't wrestle. There's no one on this earth that can tell me that I can't wrestle. And what did he do? He rehabbed. He rehabbed and rehabbed because he wanted to get back in that ring. He worked hard to get to where he was, not to just let it disappear like that. Fast forward to 2020, we see Stone Cold talking about how he's adjusting to all the injuries that he's been through. He doesn't look back at wrestling. Those moments were good, but he wouldn't go back and do them again. So what he did do was ask older wrestlers, the wrestlers that were 10, 15 years older than him, hey, how do you feel? What injuries do you feel? Because they've been through the same thing, similar problems. And for him right now, he says he's in good health. He's good. He's just not trying to go back and do none of that wrestling. But what the WWF did, they took Stone Cold's injury, and once he got better, they brought him back, and the WWF Attitude Era started. Now, if y'all remember this is where chaos began. I'm talking about wrecking cars, everything you could do over here. People getting hit with stuff. Oh my goodness, this was a good time to be watching wrestling, especially the WWF. I'm talking, they have everything. They got sex on here. They got the girls showing their tatas, everything. Stone Cold drinking beer. They getting arrested, fighting cops. The Attitude Era has to be hands down the best era to watch wrestling. And I'm just glad that I got to experience that when I was in middle school and high school. And now the moment we all been waiting on. Dun 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 dun. That Stone Cold theme music come on. Triple H said it best. When you heard that glass break, you looking, what the hell? What's going on? Where's Stone Cold at? Is he coming down the ramp? If he wasn't coming down the ramp, he's coming through the crowd in the stands. The breaking of the glass was going to tell you if you were going to have a good show or a great show. Stone Cold did a little reminiscing about, Stone Cold, the Steve Austin guy, he's not going to make us any money. Once that glass broke, look at me now. Y'all didn't think I was going to do anything? Stone Cold took wrestling to a whole nother level. We got Stone Cold back, but the only way that we can have this hero is if we have a villain. And what was the best villain to have? Mr. McMahon. Now, the reason they said this worked so good is because Stone Cold was all of us. We all have a boss. We all work for somebody. And Stone Cold was always giving the man the business and not taking shit from anybody. The reason they gelled so well is because it's a real storyline. You got an employee with the boss. Vince always wanted to be a wrestler, but he couldn't, and this was his opportunity. And we all looked at a boss at one point like, man, I'll stun your ass, man. I hate work. Stone Cold was doing it for us. Stone Cold was living life, and we were just enjoying it all. And it was an every week thing, and we all enjoyed and loved it. Now, Stone Cold, we know he used to wear too tight of shorts. Them jean shorts, he couldn't always get his foot up high enough. So most of the time, he was kicking Vince right there in the balls. But Vince will go along with it, catch that stunner, and keep it moving. Every week, they wanted the top. What did Stone Cold do last time? Okay, let's outdo it. Let's drive a Zamboni down to the ring. Let's drive a bus. Let's drive a cement trunk and put cement inside McMahon's new Corvette. They were doing everything. One of my most favorite moments was when he hit him with the bedpan. Now, Steve didn't want to hit him with it because he's like, hey man, this is stainless steel. And Vince is just like, look, hit me with it. That's good TV. The Vince and Steve Austin beef, little rivalry, it went on as long as it could. But he actually needed a real wrestler because when they would get in the ring and do any wrestling matches, it's not that entertaining. Vince isn't a wrestler. So they had to find somebody up and coming that they can take to the next level to compete with Stone Cold. And the reason they had to do this is because Steve Austin is everywhere. Everybody knows Steve Austin. Not only is it good marketing that we can get another wrestler and, build off of Stone Cold's wave, but we're going to need actual contenders to wrestle with him. Stone Cold is nonstop work. He's everywhere. He's on TV. He done crossed over. He's a pop star at this point. He's an icon, a living legend. Stone Cold Steve Austin 316 shirt over here, Skull shirt over here. He's everywhere. He never really talked about his personal life back at home because he was always on the road. His focus was always, how can I get better? What can I do next? He was so disconnected with everything. He was in New York City for his daughter's birth. He gave her first bottle. Then he hopped on a plane and went to Pennsylvania because, hey, wrestling. I got to stay in this ring. The moment I'm out the ring, someone's going to have a good match and they're not going to notice me. They're going to put all the attention on them. And Stone Cold wasn't having that. His craft was wrestling and he was sticking to it. How he found his peace, the marriages didn't work out and he had his 2 little girls, but he bought a double wide house a little bit out in Douglasville, Georgia. And he had this house. He had cinder blocks, some wood, put his TVs on there. Had his cooler right there, watched some TV. That was his peace. Now, he did say his girls, they went over to live in the UK and he talked to them one time. And when he was on the phone with them, they had a full British accent. They didn't sound Texas like him anymore. And for him, that hurt him because those were his daughters and they don't have his accent or anything anymore. But he cried about it, and I can understand where he's coming from. That's tough that your girls are overseas and they don't even sound like you anymore. But I mean, that's the life on the road. Stone Cold's on top of his game and he knows, hey, we gotta get new roster in here. We gotta get new people. We gotta get somebody to go against me. So who did they get? The most electrifying man on television, The Rock. And how they started him off, they brought The Rock in. Of course, he was with the Nation, but they put him on TV. Let this guy win about 6 months without losing. Start hyping him up so when he gets to compete with Stone Cold, this will be the big market area. And that's exactly what they did. Behind the scenes, he's watching all this go on. We watch Rock skyrocket to the top also. So he said behind the scenes, Stone Cold came up to him one day and said, hey, there's something there, kid. And whenever somebody says something like that, especially someone on another level than you, and you're up under them, you know, all right, let me keep it up. Let me keep it up. The good thing about The Rock and Stone Cold is they always pushed each other. The Rock is a little bit younger than him, but they always pushed each other. He looked at Stone Cold as an older brother. And when they got in the ring, the chemistry was just on another level. He knew what Stone Cold was going to do. Stone Cold knew what The Rock was going to do. And they put on the show every time they got in the ring with each other. Now, if you don't remember this episode, he threw Stone Cold on the announcer's table, picked up the camera. They're like, oh, The Rock can do it all. He's even got a camera. And then Stone Cold flips him off and stuns him into the table. Oh, my goodness. This was a time to be alive. He took The Rock up under his wing and he respected Rock because he seen the talent. He watched The Rock grow, and The Rock respected him because he was a walking legend. Now, Stone Cold didn't have a big circle. He only hung with a few people. He didn't trust anybody. Now, him and The Rock, he said they never hit the road together, but whenever they linked up and they talked to each other, it was like they never skipped a beat. They were always on that page, and that relationship was like a big brother, little brother. They just didn't have to see each other as much. We all know The Rock's story. At this point, The Rock, he blew up too. He became a pop icon. He done crossed over. He's in movies. He's on TV. He's doing everything. So he's outside of wrestling. So what they do with Stone Cold is they bring in Brock Lesnar. Now, this could have been a big match, but they didn't do any build up for it. They just said, hey, we need you to come in, wrestle Brock Lesnar, and you're going to lose. And Stone Cold said, I'm done with it. I'm not going to wrestle if that's what you want to do. I don't mind losing if there's money behind it and there's a good storyline. But me just wrestling him, no. I worked too hard to get here. Brock Lesnar, if they would have let him go win 6-7 months without losing, then all right, that'd be good. Now Stone Cold has someone else since The Rock is gone. But Stone Cold, he just said, nope, I'm not doing that. Jim Ross calls Stone Cold while he's back in San Antonio like, hey, man, listen. Is there any way I can get you and Vince McMahon to sit down and y'all talk about y'all differences and get you back into into wrestling? Stone Cold, he's thinking, all right, I'll do it because all he wants to do is wrestle. And he felt like this is a lifeline. He thought that this is Jim trying to get him back into wrestling and get some money in his pocket. So he's like, all right, I'll sit down with Vince. Him and Vince sit down. Of course, they squash the beef. They get back on the same page. And what does Stone Cold do like any man would do? He goes into the locker room and he tells all the other wrestlers, hey, I apologize for my actions, because he knew he was wrong. We understand why he did it, but he was wrong because these are your brothers. This is your family. And we're looking up to you. You're the biggest one here. You can't just quit on us like that. So he apologized to him and he got back to being Stone Cold. Here's where the story starts to end towards the end of his career. Now, he said he had a wrestling match. He wanted to do his last match against The Rock. Now, he's at the gym. He's drinking a lot of coffee, energy drinks. He's not drinking enough water. So he's going to the hotel and he felt like his heart was about to explode. So one of the WWE workers, they actually take him to the hospital, and all it turns out was he was dehydrated. But the doctor was like, "Hey, we don't want to release you or anything." But Stone Cold's like, "Nah, I gotta do this match." Once he gets to the arena for the final match, he said when he gets there, you see all the other wrestlers in the locker room. He doesn't say anything to any of them because he felt like if he said something, he would start crying because this is his life. This is what he's been doing, wrestling. But he also told The Rock, "Look, they said I shouldn't be here wrestling. My heart might explode. But if I die in a ring, what better place to do it? Die in a ring and die by the hand of The Rock. That's the perfect death." Stone Cold is wild. These two, they get in the ring and they put on a show. I remember asking my dad, could we order this pay-per-view? My dad was a huge Rock fan. I was a Rock fan. I was a Stone Cold fan. And these two put on a show. Rock even put on the vest and he's running around acting a fool. But he gets the rock bottom and he actually gets the win. And that's what Stone Cold wanted. The rock bottomed him, pinned him. Stone Cold said when that 3 count hit, felt like 1,000 bricks were just let off my back because he knew, hey, it's over with. And at the end of the match, The Rock pushes the ref out the way and he talks to Stone Cold and he tells him, "Thank you for everything. I love you." And Stone Cold's laying there. He looks up at him. "I love you too, Rock. I love you too." And at that moment, that was the only moment that they could be vulnerable in this sport, where two grown men wrestling each other. They could tell each other they love each other and then move on. So his last match was the loss to The Rock, pretty much handing the torch over. After wrestling, you're probably wondering what he did. He said, "I had to go out to LA and try to make some money off this marketing that I've been doing my whole life." So he got into movies, hosting TV shows, and then he started his podcast, The Broken Skull. Now, with this, he just brings in other wrestlers, managers, anybody that has to deal with wrestling, just to keep those connections with them. And it's an actually good podcast. You should check it out. In the words of Stone Cold, nobody tells Stone Cold what to do. And that's the bottom line. People, Stone Cold. There you go. The first biography, WWE Legends, featuring Stone Cold. Hit up the comments. Let me know what's your favorite moment of Stone Cold, because I know we all have one. Let me know what you think below. Thanks for watching. I'm Rowdy. If you like the content on the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and be here next week for part 2 of the biography, WWE Legends. I'm Rowdy, and I'm out.
Jimmy on the beat, boy.